Hi, I'm Jim Juno, and this is Lights Camera Author, where we talk with people who write books about Hollywood and the entertainment industry. And I got with me tonight somebody I've been looking forward to talk to all week, Bruce Bruce Vilanchi. I'm sorry, Bruce
Vilanch.
Vilanch. Bruce
You
Vilanch.
made me Italian. Everybody,
Ah, it's
everybody I date will now be more excited.
exactly. You can call me Junot. That's how So, but
Like that.
yeah, Bruce Vilanch, and his new book is coming out in March. It's called It Seemed Like a Bad Idea at the Time. And they may be saying this about disappearance in his career, but we'll take a chance on that.
One never knows, do one?
And Bruce, you have written some of the. I mean, you've got Emmys for Oscars, and you've been on
No,
television.
bizarre, isn't it?
On,
You're getting an Emmy for writing an award show. There's
and
some deep irony happening there. I don't know what it is.
and
The
your
show
mother
is meta.
your mother still can't get it straight. You got Oscars for the
My
Emmys
mother
or
was
Emmy.
always confused. She kept saying, "You won an Oscar, didn't you? Right for the Emmys." I said, "No, you can't win an Oscar for writing the Emmy. You
Well,
can win an Emmy for writing the Oscars."
Well, I tell you what, I was reading this book, and these are some of the all-time great TV shows.
Oh,
And
I agree.
I'm gonna say this. I mean, I've seen a lot of these, and I don't know what that says about my viewing habits, but these I saw I saw some of these when they came out. Um,
Well, what does it say about your age? That's
yeah, I
the more
know
important thing
it.
in this era.
I tell you what, I mean, it's like we didn't need streaming back when I was a teenager. We had three TV channels,
That's
and
right.
how they still manage to get San Pedro Beach bums on the TV, I'll never
San
understand. But
Pedro, that was Aaron Spelling. He could get
yeah,
anything on the air at one point.
that's right.
I hear every now and again I hear about projects that he couldn't get on the air, and I'm kind of stunned. Like, really? Why?
I
Why?
got with see, and Fred Silverman was Pink Lady and Jeff, wasn't it? I mean,
Well,
that was
that was Fred. He did a lot of it. But at one point, he ran each of the three networks
that's right. You see that in your
separately. I
book.
was waiting for him to take over PBS. I thought that would be the most interesting.
We could have Kim Kardashian doing firing line. That's like. But you worked on some. I just want to go over some of these for you with you real quick. The Star Wars Holiday Special. Now, everybody, if you've not seen this one,
A
it's.
work of rare genius.
I saw it when it was originally broadcast back in 1978 because I was a big sci-fi geek. But I mean, that was one of your first writing credits, wasn't it?
Well, not one of the first. I mean, I came out here in '75 and to write the Manhattan Transfer short-lived
That's
TV
right.
series, and so I had done a bunch of variety shows, specials and stuff. But it's pretty early on, I guess. It was a couple of years, 2, 3 years after that. But
Uh,
I had made inroads. I was making a living.
yes, and I mean, and plus Star Wars was hot. I mean, that was
It
that
was
was.
it was hot. It wasn't legendary. It hadn't become the Scientology of the nerds. It was a big summer hit, and this was a year later. And George was concerned with stirring the pot because he was about to start shooting The Empire Strikes Back, and which would not be released for another year. And he wanted to have stuff going to keep the engine warm because after a year, 18 months, it was beginning to cool down. Star Wars had become a thing, but he wanted to make sure it remained a thing, and this was one of the things he was doing to see that.
And he had Christmas coming up. He probably had merchandise that he wanted to sell.
That you very good,
You
bingo,
know, so
bingo.
they have the holiday special. And the thing I remember was Luke Skywalker looked like his makeup was done by a Japanese kabuki artist. I mean,
It was odd. I don't remember where that. I mean, Mark had that terrible accident, and he had to have a lot of work done. And I'm not sure where that happened, if it happened before then or after. But yeah, he did. He looked weird.
yeah.
When I looked at when I was writing the book and I was looking at the tape a lot, I thought he does look. He looks. There's something strange there. Maybe this is. I lost the timeline, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But he's gamely in there. He's doing the sketch, right? I mean, he's doing the scene with the robots and all this kind of stuff, as opposed to like Harrison, who would, you know, would only play genuine Star Wars stuff. Didn't was not going to stray from the character at all, and Carrie, who wanted Princess Leia to sing.
Yes, I mean that's what I don't remember her. She did not sing in that, if I
She
recall.
sings at the end.
At the very end.
She
Okay.
sings a very anodyne song about Life Day, which is the holiday that George invented, thinking it would be like Festivus for the rest of us, which came, but it would be like a non-denominational holiday. And it did. That was in the first special. They were bringing Chewbacca home for Life Day, and of course it didn't take. And he held on to it until he made his deal with Disney Plus, and he sold it to Lego, a second Star Wars holiday special done by Legos, an all new show. But it was a celebration of Life Day because George he never lets go of an idea. I mean, he was going to make it work, and he may not have realized that there's already that the nerds have a holiday called May 4th. May the 4th be with you. So May 4th is kind of unofficial Star Wars Day among the cognoscenti. So he may not have known that.
That's
But
true. Yeah.
Life Day was what. So anyway, there was a Life Day anthem. The show ends with a ceremony with a whole bunch of people wearing Wookiee heads and marching around in red capes, kind of like a cult. And Carrie is in the midst of this thing, and they're passing crystals and lighting candles. And Crystal Candles is a great name for a stripper, by the
That's
way.
right.
And and she sings this song about celebrate life, but it's rather a dour song for a subject celebrating life. It sounds actually very sad, and again, it did not catch on.
I don't know why. I mean, it's like
Your guess is as good as mine. I
you know,
think people were just happy with the end of the show at that point, and and it might have ended on an up, but it was not supposed to be your standard issue variety show where every show ended with a finale with confetti and feathers and glitter and somebody tugging their ear saying "see you next time" or any of that kind of stuff.
right.
It was going to end like a big production movie.
And George Lucas will not talk about it till this to this
Oh no,
day.
no, he's done everything he can to bury it, but it keeps cropping up on the internet.
But you got
I
paid
think that
for it,
his
right?
his his letting Disney do a thing called the Star Wars Holiday Special indicated that he was kind of surrendering to the idea that there had been one, it had happened, but he was not involved in it.
Yeah, but you got paid for it though. I mean, hey, that's
Of course, that was sure.
And I'm gonna go to the second chapter here. I
Ah,
actually saw this. I saw this when it first aired again, and I'm like, was I that big of a dork? I mean, it was like
to
um,
watch what
the Paul Lynde
oh, the
Halloween
Poland
special.
Halloween. Well, it became a perennial because there are very few Halloween shows that don't
True.
involve slashers and jump scares and goblins and ghouls. And this was one of them. And this was the kind of show that you could watch with your kids. And initially, we had Kiss. And so a whole
Mhm.
younger demographic tuned in and they could watch the show with their parents because it was a Paul Lynde
Right,
special. And Paul, they loved Paul. He was grouchy. And he was, of course, Uncle Arthur on Bewitched.
right.
So he
And
already had his witch street cred.
that's the
He was
reason.
already a part of Halloween.
And that was the reason I was watching it because it was like the first time Kiss was on TV.
That's right. Uh,
You know.
they did three numbers,
Yeah.
which is
Eh,
astonishing when you consider what the show was. The but they were, including Beth, which is their biggest
That's
single,
the thing.
and
Yeah.
it's like the most non-Kiss song ever. It has none of the Kiss trademarks in it. It's a
Mm-mm.
guy sitting at a piano in full Kiss makeup, bemoaning the fact that he can't see his girlfriend or his boyfriend
Exactly.
if he happens to know a guy named Beth, which is rare.
And that was a time. Now, if, I'm going to back up ways here, but when I was in high school, Kiss, had that rumor, not KISS, Knights in Satan's Service, and so they were on TV, and Beth, like you said, Beth was just out of left field.
Yeah, it was. Where did that come from? But I think it was somebody in the organization was very smart. Maybe Bill Coyne, who was the guy who managed them, who I knew. I think he knew that a lot of their audience were teenage girls, and teenage girls will always respond to a lachrymose ballad. You know,
Mm.
I mean, Barry Manilow can tell you. I mean,
Yeah,
that's he, of course, his are bigger. I mean, they're orchestrated with modulations, and this was kind of like a straight out thing. But in the midst of all of the Kiss mania, there was this sentimental song sung by one of them, and I'm sure that drew a lot of girls to the band who were not necessarily rockers.
that's true. And like you said, Paul Lynde was well known from Hollywood Squares
Oh yeah,
and like Bye Bye Birdie, that movie.
right.
You know, so and plus Broadway. But so what did it take? Was he hard to write for?
No, it was fun to write for him because he had that character. You know, disgruntled, grouchy, and usually he was in the way. He was like the landlord who wouldn't let you pay the rent or came for the rent, or he would not let you can't buy you don't eat that. And it was always like that was his character, and it was firmly established in Bye Bye Birdie. And so he could play, and even on that show we did kids, big number from Birdie. So everybody knew what you were getting when Paul showed up, but it wasn't the kind of thing that sustained. He was never the center of stuff. He would come in even on his own shows. He'd be surrounded by other elements, and he would come
Mhm.
in and do one thing and then disappear. I call it a flavor,
Yeah.
and so that was fun to write for because you knew exactly what it was, and you could tailor it to whatever the occasion was. And of course, you also knew that Paul could get a laugh on anything just by the way he delivered the line because he had that trademark kind of bleat, that miserable thing. I mean, even when he says he was talking about Dorothy, he says, "And her little dog Toto."
and
He was
had
just mad at the dog's name. He was mad at everything.
and you had Margaret Hamilton on there,
Yes,
and
she was his long-suffering housekeeper
yeah,
who revealed herself to be the Wicked Witch of the West.
and now did that have H.R. Puffins? No, not
We
H.R.
had a
Puffinstone.
Witchy Poo.
Witchy Poo,
We had
yeah.
Winifred P. Wilhelmina P. Witchy Poo, who was from H.R. Puff and stuff. Sid and Marty Croft character, and that was Billy Hayes, and she was Margaret's sister. We eliminated Glinda the Good Witch, although we did bring Betty White on as kind of a Glinda, but we didn't identify her as Glinda, unless we did, and I'm forgetting. But uh, Billy Hayes was Margaret, who was then at that point the witch, takes Paul to visit her sister for
and
Halloween, who's also a witch. And of course, Paul is not aware of any of this until he looks at the two of them. You're a witch.
you make a good point in your book also. A lot of people forget Betty White. She was a she was
She was
a
she was a
sexual.
horn dog.
I was
She
gonna say, yeah.
I don't think in real life. I mean, because she was happily married to Alan Ludden from Password. Uh, but after he died, she began leaning on the horn dog aspect of her persona.
Yes.
She was in like Sue Ann Niven on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. She was sort of passive aggressive, but very flirty. And as she got older, she realized that it was funny to have uh, an older woman who was coming on to people. And this was in contrast to what she was playing on the Golden Girls, where Rue McClanahan was playing that part. She was just playing the dumb part.
Yes,
She was
indeed.
incredibly dumb on the show. But uh, so and
And
there were the two things going: Betty White in person, and then Rose on the Golden Girls. So there were she had two different things going, and but we
excuse me.
didn't have Golden Girls yet when we
Right.
had her on the fall show. We just had Betty White.
Right. And that segues. You mentioned her being a horn dog. It segues into your next show with Florence Henderson and the Brady Bunch Hours.
Ah, yeah.
Florence
Well,
Henderson was a bit of a loose cannon too, wasn't she?
she
She was.
was in real life, yes. I mean, she was, of course, extremely tasteful, and she was a Broadway star and a Vegas star, but she was an adult star. And then kind of the Brady Bunch kind of infantilized her a bit. Because she became this squeaky clean mother of three and later six. And and of course the whole show was a real family show, and she never got a chance to show the other side. But in her real life, she was very bawdy and funny and kind of out there.
She
And the funny part of it was you didn't expect it, so it always came from left field and made you laugh.
flashed her boobs at one
She
point,
flashed
didn't
her
she?
boobs at us, yes. After we had played a trick on her, and
Yes.
she came back and flashed her boobs at the writers to let us know that it was okay with her. We didn't even play a trick. She could play a trick on us.
We're not going to let you. We're not going to tell you out there. We're not going to tell you what the incident was. You got to get the book for that because it's
Oh,
really
you must.
funny.
It's a
Yes,
funny. It's a chapter filled with marginally filthy incidents.
yeah, the Brady Bunch hour. This was. You ever thought that? I mean, of course, not one person thinks up these ideas.
Right.
It
We
takes a.
wonder who thought up that one at all. That's strange.
I gotta. You wrote also for Johnny. Did you write for Johnny Carson also?
I wrote a little bit for Johnny.
Uh,
I was never on staff. I would give him
Ah.
jokes every now and again.
Oh,
I
okay.
would just call and give him jokes.
Oh, you just call him up and I mean.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at the office, I met him somewhere at a party, and he knew who I was. He knew what I was writing, and he's just said, "Oh, and I gave him a joke, and he used it on the air, and then he said, 'Call me anytime.'" So
Oh,
he
cool.
had a room full of guys, and they would come in every morning, and they had to have 18 jokes on the desk by 3:30, I think,
Oh my
so he
gosh.
could start winnowing down the monologue.
The let's talk about what I call a cocaine fever dream now. Um, Can't Stop the Music,
Oh yes, you
which
were right on there.
Alan was this an Alan Carr
This
production,
was
wasn't it?
Alan Carr. Yes, this was an Alan Carr production.
And I knew that Olivia Newton-John was supposed to be the star of it, but she decided to make
It was
Xanadu.
actually the first one was Jackie Bissett.
Jacqueline Bisset, yes, oh,
Jacqueline
Jack
Bissett
Bisset,
was
yeah.
because when we all went to see the Village People together when they were taping a concert segment for Don Kirshner's rock concert, and uh, we all piled into Alan's limo, and we went down to the studio, and we met the two guys, the two Frenchmen who had created the Village People, and they took us aside and told us the story of how it happened. This group, and Alan fell in love with the idea of telling the story of how the Village People came to be, and in his version of it, he wanted Jackie to play this very elegant Madison Avenue type who saw them and was putting them in a commercial for milk. Uh,
Milk, huh?
but not for milk. She decided that she was going to create this group when she
Yes.
she put this thing, and of course, and Jackie and her partner at the time, Victor Dre, uh, entertained the notion, but it wasn't going to do it. But Alan had turned Olivia Newton-John into a movie star with
Mhm.
Grease, and of course, I thought now we were headed in the right direction because to contrast Olivia, who blonde and squeaky Doris Day, virginal, all of that, with the Village People, who of course were funky and
Yeah.
and that would be a nice contrast that she would come up with this idea, and she rode with it for a while, but then she didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
She did Xanadu instead, and you
Which
see where
was,
that got her. That
yeah,
was promptly the end of her movie star career. That and the picture she made. I think she made a picture called Two of a Kind. I
two of
think,
a kind. Yes. Uh-huh. With John
but
Travolta.
yeah, but it didn't matter because she had albums behind each of these things, and they were all huge. So
True. And the Village People, you go from Can't Stop the Music to opening for Donald Trump, which
I like
kind
that. Well,
of
only 40 years later. So
only 40. But that
only
looks like a series of bad decisions and so far.
well, yeah. I mean, the two Frenchmen have been gone for a while. They're dead, and everybody is out of the Village People except for Victor Willis, who quit before the movie
Yeah.
and then came back after all of that, many decades later. Because I got friendly with Jacques. even though I was off the picture at it after a certain point. But he came to me and asked me to write lyrics to some songs of his for a review in Paris. And Eartha Kitt, we recorded one of them, and that was a big disco hit called "Where's My Man." And then I wound up writing an album for the Village People called "Sex Over the Phone," which
I
was
remember that
banned by the
album.
BBC. So of course it immediately went gold in England,
Yeah.
and and then that was that. And he uh, uh, then he got sick not long after that, and he died. And the band was kind of rudderless for a long time. They didn't record, but they were a performing act, and they became a nostalgia act and all of that. And now they've kind of come back. It's Victor Willis's Village People, and it's a whole other thing.
Exactly.
And the funny part is that YMCA became an anthem for at sports things, like a
Hmm.
seventh inning stretch, people standing up and dancing and making YMCA and all of that. And they had no idea what they were singing about.
Oh,
I
I
mean, it
know
was
it.
guys hooking up at a gym, that's what it was about.
I mean, it was
Uh,
like, yeah, it was
and
a
to
gay
this
anthem.
day, and I don't think Trump has any ideas that's what it's about either.
I like when he gets up on the
Those
stage and
young Christians dancing.
the Alan Carr played several roles for you in this book.
Hmm.
The Oscars,
Yeah, that was the first Oscar show I did.
yeah, with the with
First of the
so
25 I formally worked on.
yeah, those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, just Google Snow White Oscars and see.
Yeah, you'll find it.
You'll find
It'll
it.
pop right up.
I mean, it was like now, what I remember from that show, and you mentioned it in the book that people forgot Lucille Ball and Bob
And
Hope.
Bob Hope.
But I
That was
remember,
Lucille's last appearance.
yeah,
She
and she
she
wore a dress
died
which
about a
was
month later.
yeah, and she wore a dress that was slid up to her hip, and I was like,
Well, she had great legs, and she loved to show them, even then.
yeah, no, but they were the ones who introduced this. How did
They
this came
introduced
to be?
the
Oh,
other number,
the other number
not
they introduced.
not the
Okay,
Rob Lowe number. They introduced a number called Young Hollywood,
that's right. Yes, that's right.
where they had the children of Hollywood personalities doing a number about how they wanted to win an Oscar. Notice Lucille's children, who actually were in show business, are in show business, didn't want to be in the number.
That's a red flag right there for you.
Right there, yeah. I mean, her own kids didn't want to be in the number, but
You also you say you inherited the role of the center square, the gay square from
yeah,
Paul
sort
Lind.
of, yeah. I mean, there's always one on every
Yeah,
game show. Charles Nelson Riley was on the Match Game,
that's true.
and we on Squares, Waylon Flowers and Madam, Richard Simmons,
Oh,
Billy DeWolf, who was an old character actor from the studio period. There were always a lot of question. Rip Taylor. They were all like questionable uh, role models for men. They were all a little light in the loafer. They were and but it was the kind of thing where we would say um, if they get it, they laugh, and if they don't get it, it's like they don't
yeah,
get it. That's all. They don't get pissed off. They don't think that they just didn't get it. They didn't. So they didn't think in those terms back then,
e-
especially. I mean, they might say, "Well, he's a little light and loafer," but they wouldn't mention it because it wasn't a nice thing to think about
exactly.
about someone.
And nowadays, can you get away with something like that?
Well, no, now people are out, and
Yeah,
I mean, Jim J. Bullock. I mean, he was also one on Squares, but now people are out and they're openly gay, and also there are people who are openly gay who aren't like that, like Matt Bomer and Jonathan Bailey, Andrew Rannells, a younger generation of actor, um, and who make Jonathan Groff, who make no bones about their sexuality, and so it's when somebody shows up who's kind of giving you that, like Carson Kressley, uh,
yeah,
it feels almost like old school. But the fact is, what it's saying is that there are all kinds of people in the spectrum of gayness.
Yeah,
and
and
women as well. Fortune Prime Minister, and Katie Lang. I mean, there's a whole list of people who
it's
are out there.
it's accepted now. It's
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, some people will never accept it, right? But some
some
people
people,
never
yeah.
accept Jews or Black people or
Hmm.
Latin people. I mean, and so it goes.
Exactly,
But
and
people like those people are pretty hardcore at this point.
I was wondering, game shows are making a comeback now.
Well,
Um,
because they are cheaper to produce.
hmm.
I mean, this Hollywood Squares with Drew Barrymore cost less to produce than an episode of FBI International.
That's
And
true, yeah.
if it can draw the same numbers, the same ratings, then it's a good thing for the networks. They don't repeat well, but
Yes.
except on ancillary things like the game show network, that don't require a big tune in anyway. Uh, but if you put Alec Baldwin in as the host of Match Game and you stock it up, and once a week you unleash it for an hour, and it's not costing you nearly as much as it is to do NCIS Palm Springs or wherever the hell they are these days.
Yeah,
I
NCIS
had
is
a joke years ago about CSI Malibu, where an arm washes up on the shore, but it's wearing cheap jewelry, so nobody gives a shit.
I tell you what, I'm really enjoying this, but fortunately we're about out of time. But
Oh no, okay. Well,
uh, it's a it's a half
it
hour
happened.
show, you know,
Yeah,
and
right.
I
Where
do
are you, by the way?
I'm in Richmond, Virginia,
Oh, cool. Very good.
and my doctor once asked me, "You do a show about Hollywood from Richmond, Virginia?" And I said, "Yeah."
Why not?
Why not? I
Why
said
not?
it's
That's the joy of the worldwide internet web.
exactly. That's what I told people. I said it's the Zoom
Right.
technology, you
Exactly
know. So,
right.
well, Bruce Vilanch is the author, and the book is It Seemed Like a Bad Idea at the Time.
Yeah.
And Bruce, I hope that this is not one of your bad ideas at the time. But
Right.
thank you so much for being on the show
You're so
tonight.
welcome. Thank you.